Hey guys, this is YoDa. This will be my Protection Paladin guide for Season 4 of Dragonflight. So, in Season 4, Protection Paladin is actually, in my opinion, taking a step backwards. In Season 3, the tier set was extremely good defensively. Basically, it was 10% DR plus like more than 10% damage. Whereas in Season 4, you're basically just getting verse for yourself and your ally. It's probably slightly higher damage-wise, but the defensive benefits are much, much worse. So yeah, Paladin is probably not going to be as strong as it was in Season 3, but it's definitely still a strong tank. You can still, carry noob healers, you can help with one-shots, you can res, you can solo kick casters, all the good stuff is still there. So we'll start with stats and the rest of your gear. So for stats, I get a lot of questions about this. Priority number 1 is going to be haste. Haste gives you longer sentinels, less cooldown on pretty much everything. Like, since you have this talent called Righteous Protector and another one called Resolute Defender, every time you spend Holy Power, it reduces the cooldown of your defensives. So haste is going to let you spend more Holy Power, which gives you cooldown reduction on everything. Which is going to give you more defensive uptime, more sentinel uptime, more damage, blah, 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 all the good stuff. You want to stack as much haste as you possibly can. I would even go like into 30% DR, don't care, just keep going haste. We're going to have so many stats in Season 4 that you're not going to be lacking in the other stats, even if you try to stack haste. For the rest of the stats, crit is going to be your best offensive stat, but defensively, it is the worst. That's because for other tanks, crit can sometimes be good, like VDH defensively, because it gives you parry, but for Paladin, you have the option to go Mastery instead of crit. And Mastery gives you block chance, and if you block an attack, it's kind of like parrying it. It does a little bit more damage to you, but as long as you survive the hit as a Paladin, you're kind of happy. And if you block it, you survive it. So Mastery is going to be, as we mentioned, our best defensive stat. It gives you more damage reduction in Consecrate, like stronger than Verse damage reduction. It gives you attack power, and it also gives you block chance. So Mastery is by far our best defensive stat. It is like crazy strong. And then Verse is kind of just in the middle. Like, it gives you good single target, and it gives you damage and healing. Not as much damage defensive value as Mastery, but it does have better offensive value, especially single target, and it does make you heal more. Verse is kind of on the back burner as a defensive stat, but it's also, you don't want to have like 0. And crit, you don't want to have 0 crit either, because like the first few points give you a decent amount of parry, and you also don't want to do ZDPS as a tank, so we're going to be playing some crit. So those are your stats. Now, those are like the basic visor stats, but going to Season 4, we're going to have bullions. So it's kind of possible to just craft like a best set of gear and just have it, like, 3 weeks in or whatever. So we're going to go over what I think the best set is. We'll talk about trinkets first. So it's kind of like pick 2 out of 3. There's Rage Heart, Incarnate Icon, and Prophetic Stone Scales. I think all 3 are actually viable. Stone Scales, you'll have to either use your Season 3 one or farm one for Mythic 0 Dawn. It'll be 515 at max upgrade compared to 528 for the rest of your gear. But specifically for Protection Paladin, I don't think Stone Scales is actually mandatory. That's because you already have 2 cheat death effects. One is from Ardent Defender, and the other one is from Gift of the Golden Valkyr. So since the other 2 trinkets that are viable are actually extremely strong, I think it is viable to play no cheat death. That said, cheat death is always nice on a tank just to have a buffer, but I think these 2 trinkets are also fine. Rage Heart and Icon. Icon just gives you a bunch of verse and also powers up your allies, giving them verse if they're wearing Icon, gives you crit and haste if they're wearing it. It's just great as a trinket. Rage Heart is also very good on Paladin, because Paladin oftentimes, like, one of the cooldowns you assign, like let's say, oh, I'm running out of cooldowns, I just have Shield of the Righteous and Ardent up, right, for this pack. You're probably going to be losing health with just those cooldowns up. Rage Heart's nice to give your healer like a little bit of time to heal you back up, and you do need help from your healer as a Paladin, unlike as VDH. So Rage Heart is nice to just give them time to watch your health. For rings, Filial Duty is by far the best ring. Haste Mastery with Heavy Mastery. You're going to be wearing that. The shield is also really useful in Paladin. And for the other ring, ideally you play the other fire ring, but as I mentioned, Paladin is going to be weaker defensively in Season 4 than Season 3. So it's viable to, in my opinion, not play Seal of Darkness Chosen. You could just play another Haste Mastery ring to help you survive. Also, if you play both fire rings, you're going to have somewhat lower haste, because this Diana ring has low haste. The other Diana ring has no haste, and you want to be playing all haste. So that's a reason to drop this. This will be your best ring for damage, but if you're having trouble surviving, you could drop it for a Haste Mastery ring. For your embellishments, you're going to want the pants, Frostfire Leg Guards of Preparation. In Season 3, this was probably better in most dungeons, but it was viable to not play this since you just had so much innate haste on the rest of your gear. In Season 4, your tier set has kind of less haste on it baseline, and on top of that, you're potentially playing 2 like low or no haste rings, so you want as much haste as you can get from the rest of your gear, and this embellishment is the best one for that. Also, you're going to want to play Lariat. Lariat's the best embellishment for stats. So those are your 2 embellishments. Tier set, you're going to want to play the other 4 pieces of your tier. And then you have boots and belt as flex, kind of. Just pick anything with high haste or leech if you get that. Cape you can craft and put your food embellishment on. Or you can also craft bracers with food embellishment. Also viable. For your weapon, you're going to want Golak, which is the fire act weapon. It doesn't have any haste, but it does have like a lot of damage on the effect. If you look at my most recent key, it did 2.5% for free, and it's all single target. That's good. Shield, anything with haste on it's fine. There's no like special shields that I know of. And that's that for the gear. Special note for Paladin specifically, Leech is extremely valuable on Prot Paladin. So for other tanks like VDH and Bear, they have enough inbuilt self-healing in their kit that they kind of just self-top themselves like permanently all the time without worrying about self-healing. But for Paladin, it's not like that. Your Word of Glory heals for like maybe 400k on average, non-crit. And you have 1.34 million health, so you are not really able to top yourself with just Word of Glory. You need help from your healer or like Golden Path or some other talents. Like if you look at my healing breakdown, it's actually only 20% from Word of Glory. There's a lot more like absorbs, some leech, more absorbs than like healing from my talents. And my healer is also healing me a lot. Like 36% of his healing is to me, or sorry, 39% of his healing is to me. As a Paladin, don't have as much self-healing as VDH and Bear. Leech is basically just gonna every point of leech, every amount that you leech is some amount that your healer didn't have to heal you, so that is very good. All right, so that's your stats. For talents, you're almost always going to want to play this setup on the right. On the left, you can drop Bop for Lightforge Blessing. The top has a lot of choices. You can play Freedom or Short Hodge. At the bottom, you're pretty much always going to play this. There was at some point a build where you could drop Seal of Might and play like this, but that's not longer viable now that Righteous Protector is only 2-second reduction. Golden Path is no longer really viable. It was good for season 3 because your tier set powered it up, but your tier set doesn't work on it anymore, so you never play it. You just play Bop or Lightforge Blessing if you don't need Bop. And then at the top, you can do a couple changes like Short Hodge, Freedom, Turn Evil. You can also drop Punishment sometimes, although I very rarely will drop Punishment. I think you should play Punishment all the time. On the right, you're pretty much just playing this every key. If you want, you can drop Spell Warding for Inspiring Vanguard. If you don't need Spell Ward, you can also drop it for Improved Ardent. I did this in Algathar, I think, in the past. And if you are literally never scared of death, you can drop Sentinel for Crit Wings, Avenging Wrath Might. Prot Paladin is like not as tanky in season 4 as in season 3, so I probably wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're very, very confident or it's just a low key. But yeah, you do have that option. If you really need an extra talent point, you are allowed to drop Inmost Light, which is a massive damage loss, but you can drop it for Consecrated Slow, Consecrated Ground. Sometimes you just need a slow, and this is how you get it. You can drop Spell Warding for it, or you can drop Inmost Light if you need Spell Warding. So yeah, those are the Paladin talents. Next we'll go into the gameplay. Basically, you always want to be maintaining Shield of the Righteous. If you just like are spending Holy Power, you'll be able to keep it up. As long as you're like playing the game, you'll pretty much have this up all the time. The only way you'll drop Shield of the Righteous is if you start using Word of Glory on yourself without Shining Light. You should almost never use Word of Glory without Shining Light. Not only will it make you fall behind on your cooldown reduction, it'll also potentially cause you to lose Shield of the Righteous procs or Shield of the Righteous uptime. If you ever drop Shield of the Righteous uptime, you're going to take way more damage than that Word of Glory healed you for, so just don't do it. Other than that, you're going to want to use Sentinel as many times as possible, and you're going to want to keep your buff up from the tier set. So every time you Shield of the Righteous, or you use Avenger's Shield, gives you this Ally of the Light proc. Make sure you have 100% uptime on that, or as close to it as possible. So basically just use a shield every now and then. On AoE or in trash, you're probably going to do that anyway, but on single target, you kind of have to remember to do it. Then defensively, your rotation is going to look something like this. You're going to go into the pack. You're going to pull with shield. Paladin is actually really, really good on pull. You just shield, tag every pack once, then Wings Toll, boom, everything has aggro all today. For AoE, you're going to want to prioritize Judgment as number 1 and Shield as number 2. However, a lot of time in trash packs, you're going to want to use your shield, save your shield for Interrupt. So it's really just Judgment as your first priority, Shield for Interrupt, and then Blessed Hammer. Hammer of Wrath is good for priority damage, but for pure overall, you prefer to not use it over Blessed Hammer because Blessed Hammer can give you resets. As for defensive rotation, you want to use Sentinel and Eye of Tyr as many times as possible. Like those are your first line of defense since they also do damage. You want to get as many uses in as possible. Then basically when you don't have Tyr, like after this Tyr falls off, you can go into either Ardent or Guardian. When you have Ardent, you're probably gonna be losing health. So after Ardent, usually it's like Guardian. After Guardian, you can bubble, or you can kite if you don't want to bubble. Or ideally, Sentinel's also back if you're not like chatting while you're doing it. You can also rage heart or just run away. So that's the basic rotation. Basically, just have something up at all times. You want to. A lot of the time you can tier during Sentinel for a damage gain, like you just tier insta, and then when your Sentinel's over, you just rotate back to tier. You can like Ardent into Guardian into tier again, basically. But basically, the plan with Paladin is to always have at least one cooldown running and try not to overlap. If you overlap, then at least overlap short CDs, like Sentinel with tier is fine, Sentinel with Ardent's fine. Tier with Ardent's fine, but don't do like Guardian plus Sentinel. That would be terrible. Or like Guardian, or like Bubble plus anything obviously is wrong because Bubble can cover everything itself. So that's the basics of how to survive and how to play the game, I guess. If you're, I guess I should mention the baseline is you're using your generators, which is these three, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, and Hammer to build Holy Power, and then you use Shield, you spend them with Shield of the Righteous to do damage. And Shield of the Righteous also gives you cooldown reduction and it gives you armor, blah, blah, blah. You want all that. As for utility, so the main reason you actually bring Prop Paladin, one of the most fulfilling things to do as a Prop Paladin is you're able to help your healer on a lot of bosses. So keep in mind that doesn't mean you're just like forgetting to do damage. You're still gonna use all your Shield of the Righteouses. You almost never want to use Word of Glory unless it's with Shining Light. The only time you ever Word of Glory outside of Shining Light is if someone is literally going to die if you didn't do it. And even then, you would rather lay on hands than use that Word of Glory, in my opinion. A lot of Paladins have the bad habit of just spamming Word of Glory for no reason. That is like I said, really bad habit. You only want to use Word of Glory with Shining Light unless someone is literally going to die. Just say it again. Other than that, you have Sack on 1 minute cooldown. Try to use that. Try to notice when the boss is doing AoE damage. Figure out who in your party is most vulnerable to die. Usually you can tell because they've died, to healing checks before. So you're like, oh, this guy died last time. I'll sack him this time. Easy. And that's mostly it for Paladin. Honestly, not much has changed between Season 3 and Season 4. If you want to look at the Season 3 guide, I will link that below. This goes a little bit more into detail on your rotation. Most of the stats are kind of the same. Most of the stuff is the same, honestly, except your tier set has changed. In my opinion, Season 1 tier set is actually quite a bit worse than Season 3. Stronger damage-wise, but survivability is potentially going to be an issue. And that's the Paladin guide for now. Thanks everyone for watching. Peace out.